The quiet town of Ravenswood, nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, where the wind whispered secrets through the ancient trees, a man named Henry lived with his beautiful wife, Isabella. Henry's work often took him far from home, leaving Isabella alone for months at a time. On one of his routine journeys back, Henry stepped off the train at the small, desolate station near his village. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long, twisted shadows across the path he had to walk. Unbeknownst to him, an ancient, malevolent spirit had been watching him for years from within the gnarled branches of an old oak tree that stood near his road. This night, something about Henry's vibrant red bag caught the spirit's eye. The ghost, drawn to its color and the energy it seemed to emit, slipped silently into the bag, unseen and undetected. As Henry walked home through the fields, the air around him grew colder, and the night was unnaturally still. He felt an odd sensation, a weight on his shoulders, as if someone or something was watching him. But he dismissed it as the chill of the night. When Henry finally arrived home, his family greeted him with warmth and joy, especially Isabella, whose eyes sparkled with happiness. But the spirit, now residing in the house through the red bag, observed the family with a sinister intent. Its attention soon fixated on Isabella, her beauty stirring something dark and twisted within it. For weeks, the spirit remained dormant, waiting patiently. Henry, oblivious to the evil lurking in his home, enjoyed his time with his family. But when it was time for him to return to work, he left the red bag behind, a small, seemingly insignificant detail that would soon unravel their lives. With Henry gone, the spirit began to enact its plan. One night, as Isabella was closing the shutters, she heard a knock on the door. Opening it, she was shocked to see Henry standing there, looking disheveled and exhausted. "I thought you weren't coming back for another 3 months," Isabella exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and concern. "The factory's on strike. They've shut down operations for a month," the spirit replied, its voice eerily identical to Henry's, yet carrying an unnatural coldness that made Isabella shiver. Isabella welcomed him in, though a growing unease began to settle in her heart. Something was different about Henry, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. His touch was colder, his eyes darker, and he lacked the warmth she was accustomed to. But the spirit was clever. It mimicked Henry's mannerisms perfectly, lulling Isabella into a false sense of security. Over the next few weeks, the spirit stayed with Isabella, sharing her bed, whispering sweet nothings into her ear, and making love to her. Yet strange things began to happen. Isabella would reach out to touch him, only to find her hand passing through empty air. Or she would blink and find him standing across the room, watching her with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. The more these incidents occurred, the more unsettled Isabella became, but she was too terrified to confront what she was beginning to suspect. One night, the spirit, emboldened by its deception, tried to touch Isabella in a way that felt wrong, too possessive, too desperate. Instinctively, she recoiled, and in that moment, the illusion faltered. For a brief second, she saw the spirit's true form, a shadowy figure with eyes like burning coals, filled with hunger and malice. She screamed, and in an instant, the spirit was across the room, staring at her with a malevolent grin. Fear took root in Isabella's heart. She realized that the person sharing her bed was not her husband. Every night, the spirit's presence grew more oppressive. The house itself seemed to come alive with whispers and creaks, as if the very walls were conspiring with the ghost. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and the air grew thick with a suffocating sense of dread. Then, as if sensing its time was running out, the spirit told Isabella it had urgent business to attend to and left the house in a swirl of icy wind. The very next day, the real Henry returned. He encountered cold, fearful stares instead of the usual warmth when he walked through the door. Isabella, now a shadow of her former self, looked at him as though he were a stranger. "What's wrong?" Henry inquired, his voice full of confusion and concern. Isabella, trembling, replied, "You were here. You told us the factory was on strike. You stayed with me for a month. You're not real." The words hit Henry like a punch to the gut. He knew something was terribly wrong. That night, as he tried to hold his wife, an invisible force threw him across the room. Furious at the interruption of its game, the spirit had returned. The lights flickered, then went out, plunging the house into darkness. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and a low, menacing growl echoed through the halls. Isabella, sobbing, begged the spirit to leave them, but it only laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent shivers down her spine. It began to beat Henry mercilessly, throwing him around like a rag doll. In desperation, Isabella's mother ran to call Father Matthews, her hands trembling. Father Matthews, the local priest, is known for his work in dealing with such unholy matters. He arrived with a Bible and other sacred items, ready to confront the malevolent spirit. He sensed the malevolent presence even before he entered the house. The air was thick with tension, and the walls seemed to vibrate with the spirit's anger. Father Matthews, an old man with deep-set eyes, entered the room where Henry lay bruised and battered, with Isabella weeping beside him. He noticed the red bag sitting on the dressing table, the source of all their torment. The priest murmured gravely, "This bag bears a curse. The spirit has bound itself to it and will not leave until it gets what it desires." With a voice of authority and calm, the priest began chanting ancient prayers and hammering blessed nails into the corners of the room. As he recited verses from his sacred texts, the spirit screamed in fury, its form flickering in and out of sight, a grotesque figure of shadows and despair. The room shook violently as the spirit resisted, but the priest's resolve did not waver. He invoked the name of Prophet Solomon, known for his dominion over all spirits. The ghost, now desperate and weakening, threatened to kill Henry if it couldn't have Isabella. Finally, but the spirit expelled itself from the house, its power shattered with one last agonizing wail. The room fell silent and the lights flickered back on. But the horror of that night lingered, the memory of the spirit's touch etched into Isabella's mind forever. Despite being physically unharmed, the encounter left the family scarred. Isabella, haunted by the violations she had suffered, could not sleep for days, and Henry, though alive, felt a deep, unshakable chill in his soul. Generations to come would whisper the chilling tale of the spirit of Maplewood Lane, a reminder that not all we see is real,